And we're live. So I've been, it's about 12, somewhere between 12 and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this is my morning chat. And last night's chat was very nice. We were going deeper and deeper into our ability to use our Akashic records to view what's going on in the storyline of history, seeing it clearer and clearer. And his story is his story. It's what is paid for, right? And so the monsters I'm talking about is kind of how we're played. You know, the human race is played. You know, back in the day, humanity has been somebody's, science experiment. You know, that's what our avatars are, our little bag of water, you know. Now, our conscious free will, that's a different story. That was created by love's co-creation, which is the only true reality there is. Everything is made out of it, so our universe, that is a universe of conflict, is created by love's co-creation, and it was given to us as a sandbox to figure out what we want to do with our free will, right? And there is no such thing as time, but within the construct of the sandbox, we got all the time in the world. You know, the end of times is not coming. No, not to say there aren't catastrophes and wars and planets get wiped out. No, but end of time, no, not until that presence of our conscious free will steps up to love's co-creation. Right? So I've been listening to all kinds of everybody under the sun. Not everybody, but lots of folks on their YouTubes and their Facebooks. Well, not Facebook. I don't do Facebook. I find that a true waste of time. But websites and things of that nature. And Facebook, I mean, not Facebook, YouTube. YouTube is a very interesting. I don't do Twitter. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. Gmail, if you want to get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42, you can, send me a personal little thing, and people write me tons or just a few things or send me little niceties, and if you want to send me a little gratuity for doing this, all of my teachers said, no, you cannot charge particularly for this, for laying down information, right? Now you can write books maybe, if somebody publishes it, that's fine. You're going to have to do it in a story because you're a griot, so that's fine. But you can't say, okay, we're going to do this, and for $19.95 you get two. No, this is open to you and to anyone who wants to come on the channel, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, and be part of the chat. Be part of the cadre. Go into state and be part of the shock troops of love's co-creation. So that's kind of where we're at. So today, the daytime chat we're having here is kind of putting out a parameter of a not a new direction, but a more focused direction, right? Because, I started out in May, coming from the deep green and sharing that beauty and that love, that innocent love of love's co-creation. And then in October, when things started to get cold and I did, get medical help here in Roanoke, came back here. And, I'm saying in, places that have within close proximity, I have really good Wi-Fi. I have here at the library, my favorite library, the Taj Mahal of libraries, and there are a number of restaurants that have great Wi-Fi, and the school has great Wi-Fi. So it gives me the opportunity to do 2 shows a day. And I don't know how long I'll be able to do this, so I'm doing it as long as I can physically do it. And they're on YouTube. I suggest you go and look at, go back, go from the first one and head this way, or head from this way and go to the first one. And every one is quite good in their own different way, and they strike people in different ways too. So, and this is where I lay down the disclaimer that, this is strictly for entertainment, and, I don't believe anything I say. This is just, I'm a griot. I tell stories. Now, if they resonate and bring you to a higher responsibility to lead your life as an example to love's co-creation, not as an example to love's co-creation, because that's the ultimate. That's like, but following the path of love's co-creation. And this is no religion. This is no, what do you call those things? Cult. No, none of that. This is just, nice little entertaining. When I was a kid, I used to listen to, I grew up in New York City, and WOR and there were 3 stations, WPIX's radio station, WOR, and Metro Media's radio. And they had Gene Shepard, Big Wilson, what was that guy's name? And he was like the Art Bell of the 50s and 60s. And he was on late at night. And, he talked about all kinds of stuff. And, he talked about people like Van Tassel, right? And the guy who could bend spoons with his mind. And he had some, paranormal stuff and supernatural stuff and everything else under the sun. What was that guy's name? Barry Farber. So I used to listen to that late at night. My little transistor radio was, like about that big, and I had earphone in my ear, and I would just listen to it until I fell asleep, and it would play in my ears. So it kind of went into my mind, into my subconscious, and I would dream about it. I was just like Edgar Casey, who used to put books under his pillow, and when he'd wake up, he would know everything in it. So anyway, so that's kind of what I am. And they, once I hung out with griots within tribal, indigenous people, because see, words have been, my mom was a real stickler for words, and we used to read books together. So she would pick up the words, hey, they didn't use that right. So when words that people use, and they have been retasked. So like the word liberal, or the word progressive, or the word tribal, they have totally been changed to a place where they can't be used because they represent other things, but certain words can't be changed, like the word Klan, right? So the Klan was, the Ku Klux Klan used that word Klan, and they had to put Ku Klux in front of it because the word Klan wouldn't represent their hate-born dynamic. And see, that's one of the things that has happened to Homo sapiens sapien. We have this free will, and yet our avatar, our body, right, our bag of water, our mud puppet, our meat puppet, has been manufactured by this, what I would call the parental group. This group of, like the Anunnaki, but way before them. I mean, there's probably 400 different extraterrestrial groups that have come and messed with humanity's DNA, and that's why we're so within the dynamics of our avatar. We are totally messed up. Now, in our consciousness of our free will, well, that's something that can't be messed with, but it can be separated, and that's why we live in this material world of separation, because it separates us. And to, be at one with love's co-creation, we have to be conscious. The little story I keep saying about Buddha by the side of the road being this luminescent genius, not genius, but luminescent entity, and just to travel, well, goes home to, Mister, are you God? And Lucifer kind of looks at him and goes, no. What are you? A magician? What are you? And Buddha says, I'm awake. And what that meant was that he was awake to his consciousness free will. So he couldn't be played. Either could Jesus, either could Vishnu, either could, all of the great avatars. Not avatars, because our body is our avatar. Ascended masters. That's a better term for Jesus. And Jesus came here to give, and all of the ascended masters have come here and stayed here in human form to give the Homo sapiens sapien, the mud puppet, a good example of, hey, you don't have to be a mud puppet, You can step up to your consciousness's free will. Just wake up. And all of this catastrophe around you, you'll see as an illusion. And basically, one of the major reasons of what's going on in this university, and it is a university, this universe of the Big Bang, is that it was created, Lucifer, was the head angel. And when love's co-creation wanted something to co-create that had the potential to be there with it, whereas everything else went along with the plan, the hegemony of heaven. And when love's free will co-created our conscious free will, so we could, freely choose to co-create with love rather than just be forced to by being in a hegemony of heaven, Lucifer, who was number one in the pack, basically got pissed off. And his anger was so fierce that he broke that hegemony of heaven. And, and in the beginning, all things were dark. And then the word came, and that was Lucifer going, motherfucker. And again, this is a disclaimer, kids. Mom, if the kids are listening, shush them out the room. This is for grown-up entertainment, right? There's nothing inappropriate, but there are certain words, as my grandma used to say, that profanity was the mark of the ignorant. But at some times, those words are appropriate. And when they're appropriate, you can appropriately use them. Otherwise, all you're doing is showing your ignorance, right? So, let's see. Has anybody been saying anything? Oh, yeah, you have been. Look at that. I had to turn on the chat. Good afternoon. Good morning. Good evening, chaps. Hey, Mr. Ink. Research. Twitchy. Yep, WKRP. Do I look like who's the guy who's the stoner? Weaponized, yep. Let's see. It's been a while. Hey there, Eden. At the end. Civil War. I mean, ink, that's the clan across, rose to, no, all of the Civil War was a lot deeper than what history tells us, It goes back to, you know, the Luciferian thing. And the real deal about all war is that this reptilian crew, basically, why they have us subjugated, because they manufacture fear, and our fear, creates this cortisol, which creates adrenaline, and they eat that. It's like the thing that keeps them alive. And the more that humanity becomes aware of their free will and saying, no, we don't want war, we want peace. Let's they create these conflicts, and like in Rwanda, when the Hutus and Tutsis, chopped each other up in 6 months, and they did it with, not guns. The World Bank brought in through the UN shiploads of machetes, and of a certain steel that could be sharpened to the point where they could slice through bodies like butter. But 1 million people were hacked to death on both sides. And all during that, the reptilian ships just hung over and like stuck the straw in there, sucked it up. So that was the Civil War. That was, the Spanish-American War. That was the First World War. That was all of the above, right? And so when people go on about, have to fight, no. We have to love all our relations. We have to put ourselves with empathy in other people's shoes. Well, when you were born, before you come into your life, when the seed and the egg come together, your soul chooses. Chooses your parents, chooses your lifestyle, chooses all that. Choose what you're going to do, actually, the whole shooting match. And you're born, and you're kind of, the slate is wiped, and then you follow that little dance of life. So whether you understand what it is to die or not, whether you live in fear or not, it's up to you. Now, the reptilian, parental, alien, folks who kind of made, we are their laboratory experiment. And, guys like David Wilcox, Joseph P. Farrell, if you go on coast to coast, what's his name? The sock puppet, Art Bell was an amazing person, a once in a lifetime. The clone that they have in there, George, what's his name? He's a joke, right? And he works for the Illuminati. He was in naval intelligence, just like Woodworth and what's his name of the Nixon. They were both in naval intelligence, and the Navy has been around longer, has more power, has more ships. Out there in space. All those cigars that there's a floating cigar, gigantic, it's like half a football field long. Well, those, once they rediscovered, anti-gravity, because, anti-gravity and time travel are really not that difficult. All you have to do, both of the gravity is the kind of glue, in the forces. You have electromagnetic force, you have the weak force, the strong force, gravitational force, and there's a couple other forces that they can kind of say, I want to, like dark matter, what the heck is that? But gravity is this interesting fluid, back in the day of Newton and, from Newton to Einstein, that gravitational force was called the ether, right? And, Tesla and more, realized it was something else, along with, Wilhelm Reich, who realized the energetics of that energy of gravity is, the orthic or orgone energy. Anyway, all of these things are pretty easy to manipulate. Really, they're not, if you want to make yourself healthy, there's the biorhythms and cranial sacral and a few other things that you just balance. And you can balance, I'm a practitioner of that, and no one seems to really want to get healed. So, I had a big practice in New York City in the 80s. I was living in the top floor of on Pearl Street of Edison's first power station, right? And this company called Grandpa Stoll's company was their electrician, and they were a real estate company. And they had been around a long time, so they owned a lot of interesting old buildings downtown, all the way up to around the 60s. Because once you kind of went past 42nd Street, that was like the new New York City. Really, once you went past 16th Street, it was the new, once you went past Union Square, where the Flatiron Building was. And that was like, the first skyscraper, the Flatiron Building. Anyway. But Ink, you can have a memory of what you've ever done. It's called your Akashic record. All you have to do is breathe 20% more and breathe out 30%. It's not like really hard, And, it's called meditation. And it's really, I pretty much take everyone who wants to every evening on a guided meditation. And no, divine fish, we do not have to fight. We don't have to give away our power. It's not a necessary evil. No. Whenever you fight, whenever you pick a side, whenever you become tribal, whenever you lift a spear or a rock or a machine gun or an atomic bomb, all you're doing is letting the reptiles suck on your fear. And fear is the mortar of the stones of oppression. This is true. That's why we have wars, because the substance that these morons louche is the crack cocaine of the reptilians, right? And like I said, David Wilcox, he's been doing this for roughly the year 2000. And he writes books, and he goes on everyone's radio show, and he's quite good. Heal yourself in time. Yes. Yep. Past, present, future, space, time, gravity, memory, emotion. This is true fish. Physical, emotional. Yep. And that's what we do here in Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. Every night we go into state. Shamanically I prepare myself and everyone to heal. Motherland is, there is no motherland because we are all, human, right? It is all our relations, not just humans, but everybody, warm-blooded, cold-blooded, finned, skinned, reptilian, everybody. We're all our relations. And we all have to get on the bus to love's co-creation. Everyone has to go home. That's what this little sandbox is about. How to learn how to unconditionally forgive. First starting with yourself. Think we are not a tribe. We are all our relations. Tribes are very small groups of people. Right? So, you're walking around in the everyday, and if you see the innocent, you will probably find that they belong to 5 or 6 different tribes. So if you're tribal, you're going to say, I'll take care of that one, but the other I'll have to kill. I mean, that's exactly what happened in Rwanda, the Hutus and Tutsis. That was like the perfect, specific example of tribalism. That's what happened in Cambodia with Pol Pot. Example after example of tribalism. It's what happened in Yugoslavia. In 1977, I was, I went and shot the world, the Olympics. And when I was there, I really saw that, man, this is a Nazi thing. I mean, all those rings, that's a Nazi symbol. I mean, the first Olympics that happened since the Greeks, or the 1812s, or whenever they stopped doing it, was in Berlin, and Adolf Hitler, Sieg Heil, brought it into being. It was the first thing televised, and they shot it out into space. They didn't just bounce it around around Germany. They shot it out into space. And that movie with what's her name, Contact was. I mean, these movies are put out on purpose to give us what's going on, because the parental reptile tribe, who totally owns us, uses us, eats us alive. There's 1 million people going missing every year in the United States, and they don't come back. And they are basically put through these horrific things, and these reptilians kind of suck off their fear, and then they get young girls pregnant and speed up their pregnancies, so the baby is like almost full term in a matter of weeks, and so the baby has not had the proper adjustment, so it's like totally freaked out in the womb, and they are torturing the mother, so the baby is like sucking straight on that fear and that adrenaline and that cortisol and that loosh, and then they do a ceremony where they rip the mother open alive and just rip the baby out and cut both their heads off and drink their blood. And they're not drinking the blood per se, they're drinking the hormones of fear. And by us saying, oh, we have to protect the innocent, we have to be a tribe, we have to, murder other people to protect. Sorry, that's not the way to go. We see violence as not truth doesn't mean we automatically go to the extreme and say, let them run. We don't let them run amok. You never give up, you never give in, but you start. I mean, I don't know how many times I've told you stories about all the things, like we stopped a nuclear power plant in Long Island that was designed to blow up and kill millions, right? And a handful of grandmas and a few other folk in the beginning stopped, Chase Manhattan Bank and, Nelson Rockefeller and David Rockefeller and Mr. Rothschild, because Rothschild owns every single utility in America, and J.P. Morgan. And it was just a handful of folk who, right? But we never gave up. And my job was to always figure out, I was the strategist, or one of them, to get the right person to do the right thing and make them feel good about themselves doing it. There's this woman named Marge Harrison, who's your basic housewife, but she was really smart. And she always wanted to be a lawyer. So I said, you need to be our lawyer. But I'm not a lawyer. So I hooked her up with Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader hooked her up with some interesting lawyers from his pergs. And basically put her through law school, and she went to the Supreme Court 5 times and won against these gigantic multi-million-dollar law firms. So no, you just don't let them run amok. You step toe to toe with them. You go eye to eye with them, but you don't let fear get in your heart, and you don't pick up a weapon. And so, George H., because he was president all during the Ronald Reagan times, he got Ronnie to sign an executive order because, Ronnie got shot and basically died, replaced with a EBIN, EBA, or, like he was a biological entity. He was a clone. And, and still part of his Aquarian Ronnie-ness kind of came through. I mean, they didn't realize what they got when they thought they just got an actor, but no. So, you know, um, so George H. kept signing, getting Ronnie to sign these executive orders to, like, the nuclear regulatory said, oh, we have to do this licensing process. Well, Ronnie signed an executive order saying, no, that doesn't. We don't have to worry. Let it be built inappropriately. So the concrete walls are made out of paper mache. Big deal. Here's an executive order, right? And so the more we brought to light, so all the media was owned. I mean, we would have, had our shock troops of love, and what we did to show the Long Island audience, we went out and bought 20 cars, from a junkyard that kind of ran, and then there was Long Island Expressway, Northern State and Southern State. There was like 12 lanes of highway that would be needed to evacuate 1.5 million people east of Nassau County. And so we took those, we had 12 cars. We got on those roads. We got next to each other. We slowed down, stopped, got out, broke the key in the ignition, kind of poured gasoline on the car. And then, and the car was kind of filled with tires. And so we had a little gasoline, a little kerosene, and we'd set them on fire and walk away. And that would stop all traffic on all 12 lanes. So everyone heading, west couldn't go west. So it showed, the traffic jams would back up, and it showed if something happened at that nuclear power plant, this is what you're going to look at, right? And so we went to all the police departments in Nassau and Suffolk County. I did with a few other folks. And we explained this. I brought Dr. Golf Whitman, who was the guy who invented nuclear health physics. He was the doctor, the medical guy in the Manhattan Project, and he was at Brookhaven. And we took him, and Michio Kaku also came with us, and we explained to all the police what was going to happen. They'd be the guys out in the cloud. They would be the ones who would really get sick from radiation. Their families would be the last off. So when we did civil disobedience, the police refused to arrest us. Right. So then George H. had Ronnie sign executive orders saying that if any of us went over the fence, we could legally be shot. And so they brought in, contractors, guys who had been in the Marines and the Army, and who were SEALs who could shoot you from 3 miles away, and they got on top of the buildings and basically were ready to shoot people. And we would have the Suffolk County SWAT team escort us over the fence, and they were on top of their trucks with their sharpshooters saying, "You shoot the kids, we're going to shoot you." So that's how, we were never violent, but the people who were tasked to protect us, we got them to realize what was going on. So no media covered anything for the first 4 years. So I went to the Penny Saver in Suffolk County, and this guy hated the Long Island Mining Company because his electric bill just kept going up by thousands of dollars a month. And so you know, we told them, here's some, because we were getting a lot of information because we were out in front of that plant 24/7. I said, we have to create our own local Long Island life community. And we have to be here 24/7. So the guys who come by, that drive in and out, they see us, right? And not only that, the first day I started doing that, I had three of the young folk from SUNY. We were out in front of this plant, and it was sleet. I started on Valentine's Day in 1985, I guess. Might have been 84. And so we were out there, and all we had were garbage bags over us, right? And so it's sleeting, it's snowing, it's raining, it's cold, it's terrible. I got some photos of that, and we were not prepared, and we were going to stay there. We had signs saying we're going to stay here 24/7 until this plant gets closed. No, if it takes 10 years, we'll be here 10 years. Come and join us. Right? We showed them our intent, right? So we're out there, and this limousine comes by and stops, and the window goes down, and this guy goes, what, get out of the rain, come and get in here. So we get in this limo, and he goes, what are you guys doing? And we give him the full story. He goes, what? I just bought this beautiful house on the Long Island Sound, just about 3 miles east of here. And I said, buddy, you're toast. That's just where the wind is going to blow. And he was freaked. And what are you doing out here? And we told him we're starting the Long Island Life community. And he says, wow. And so he goes, I gotta get something going. And so he opened up his wallet and he gave us a few $100, and he goes, whatever you need. And he gave us his phone number, and then we got out, and he had a couple of umbrellas in the limo. We had umbrellas. So we're a little more protected. We got a few $100 in our pocket to put in the kitty, and we're out there. And about 4 hours later, these trucks come by, and they stop, and this car comes by, and they kind of put, the kind of, when you survey something, that was Billy Joel. And he had bought an acre right along I-20, right on the corner of I-25 and Tesla Boulevard. They built this nuclear power plant that was a death trap right on the footprint of Nikola Tesla's Warden Cliffs, which was the first commercial showing of free electricity, of transmission of electricity without wires and using the ether, the zero-point energy, right? He did that in the 1890s, and he didn't realize that J.P. Morgan owned him. And J.P. said, well, that's good, but forget about it. And that's when, J.P. gave Marconi the technology to, because Tesla had radio 30 years before Marconi, but he thought it was just a toy. But anyway, I digress. So Billy Joel bought this acre of land right where, and we started, and he then he bought a wedding tent that was like, 5,000 square feet. And then he dropped about 10 lazy boy recliners there, right? And that's, so we had a warm place, and he bankrolled that, right? I mean, he didn't want, he said, don't give me any credit for this, but this is long enough away. I can give him credit for it. And when he could, on Fridays, he would come down. So we said, maybe Billy Joel will be here Friday, bunch, so that was my eternal Friday night potluck dinner of good times, because we had tons of people who made great music. And so, and so that's how you go toe-to-toe with these reptiles. You can't do it with tanks and guns and swords, because you'll end up like Rwanda. And, there's a big difference between conflict, violent conflict, and not submitting. Right? Never give up, never give in. And that was our along with So Say We All, my rallying cry was never give up, never give in, so say we all. And when you got 20,000 people saying that at a rally, that's pretty powerful. And I start singing, all we are asking is give peace a chance, right? That's a pretty powerful thing. You sing like that, that's why we have a chorus. Of course, they're blurring, you know, and using sacred words. That's what they do, you know. They create, you know, tribalism. You know, that's what all these wars are about. But you know what you have to do, research. You're right. Don't let this obfuscate the love in your heart. But you have to bring that love out. And that's why last night I was saying everyone who watches this, in every one of your communities, you have to find your own cadre. And you have to, have a book club, have a coffee clutch, have a, potluck dinner every week, a dancing club, a gardening club. I mean, one of the reasons I have been involved in gardening for the last 40 years of my life. I love to garden, but it gets people to do things together. And that's what you have to do. See, research, you can't, you know, lock yourself off in a little box. I mean, that's what J-Box does, he doesn't interact with people. So you got to interact with people. And the best remedy is have a good time with folks. Go out dancing, but in every day and every way, everything you do, you need to, you know, take the piece of the earth and make it stronger. I mean, I was saying, yesterday, I keep 5 or 6 cans of food, vegetables, and with pop tops, so you don't need a can opener, right there in the front thing of my car. Plus, many a time I had nothing to eat and I had cans of food in the floor of my car, right? But when I'm driving down the road and I stop at a light and people are panhandling, I not only give them money, I give them a can of food. That's what we have to do. We have to be prepared to open our hearts to all our relations and not close ourselves off. Yeah, don't watch television, give up watching news, but go out, get in your community. I dress like a homeless person because I go to where homeless people are and I listen to them. I say, hey, how you doing? Tell me your story. And, and I always have I always have $4 or $5 in my pocket because when I run out of money, I know I have $4 or $5 in my pocket. Like today, I went and spent $100 to buy food for John and me, and toilet paper and paper, because John doesn't go out. Period. Does not go out. He is totally isolated himself. I'm the only person he sees. Right? I don't gaslight. I don't say logical. Okay, but there will always be those that can't or won't get it. The repercussion of sexual promiscuity. Yep. That, that's like spilling your seed. It's like, but love is sharing, not, the biological seed of your bag of water. Love is love's co-creation. The book says when more than two come together in my name, we can do some pretty amazing things. Yes, you don't let, that on this thing I'm calling the parental hive mind into your soul. Yes, but you have to be ready to open your heart to all our relations. And, ink, why I learned martial arts and what my sensei taught me in Putney was you never fight to win a physical conflict. You're there, your skills are there to protect you to get away. And the innocence, you go and you get the innocence out of harm's way. And you can only do that by being aware. And, and I keep saying you have to put out your beam 360, a good 3 or 4 blocks. So when that bully or that mean person or that armed group is coming to make, a mess, you gather up all of the innocent folk who don't know this thing is coming, and you get them out of the way, right? But that thing that happened in Charlotte, we had all this left, tribe of the left and the tribe of the right and the tribe of this and the tribe of that, and they smashed into conflict. Meaning the guys who were out there, who, if the folks who didn't want to scream at the Nazis weren't there, period, weren't there. It was just the Nazis. What would they do? I mean, I've organized groups to get out of the way of folk that way. So when those people would show up, they were there by themselves. It was like me when I was a child in grammar school and bullied because I was a little peanut, the most innocent peanut until I was about 14. And then I kind of grew up. I went from being about 5 foot to be about 6'11" and a half in about a year. I went from being about 70 pounds to about, 150, The difference is between actual protection, the weak, and allowing injustice to affect your inner world. Exactly. You don't let the injustice infect your inner world. And the best thing is humor and unconditional forgiveness and an egoless ego is the tools at hand. See, the difference exists between the actual protecting the weak and allowing justice to affect your inner world. I hate the sound so cold, but I've learned this the hard way, and I find not allowing it in. Well, again, if you have an egoless ego, these things don't affect you, right? I mean, we exist in the material world, which is an illusion, and we all have egos, but we don't have to wear them on our sleeve. We don't have to react. We don't have to respond. And like I said, when I was a little kid during, all the way till I was a sophomore in high school, bullies would pick on me. I didn't even know they were picking on me. It went right over my head. And when they would say mean things, I didn't respond because I didn't even hear it. I was thinking about other stuff. I was in the divine bosom of love's co-creation. So, I was thinking about high voltage. I was thinking about gravity. I was thinking about the weak force. And, I was thinking on that matter. So I didn't waste any of my bioenergy on fear or hate or anxiety or any of that stuff. And the only people who were in my life circle were my good friends, who were similar, they were, we were all different, but, and I had a chorus and I had a crew. The crew were my male friends and the chorus were my female friends, but we were all kind of the same thing in that we saw things different and we didn't worry about what clothes we had because most of those people came from middle class to poorer people. They had clean clothes, but they didn't need the newest thing. They didn't need this. They had no real needs because they were loved at home, And they had this group of friends who they felt safe with. And that's what the cadre is all about. We're in this group that we feel safe with each other. And we can say whatever we want to say, and we all listen, and we all then can, say how we feel about what we just heard. And it's safe because, you know, one thing I'm observing in the, so I'm doing these shows on YouTube. So I watch, a lot of people send me a lot of stuff, and I look at it, and I'm very quick, and I kind of can energetically see what's going on and what information. I can, it's that you hit your little finger, and the red line comes up, and you just kind of move across. You can see the whole thing, and so in the little TV, there's a big TV box that kind of freezes, and then the little one kind of goes along the red line, and you can see. Well, I can see everything, but so in that 30 seconds that I move across 2 hours worth of a YouTube show, I can see exactly what they're saying and what they're, and if anything's interesting, I stop and kind of listen to it in a more clarion way. Selflessness is key to delusion of the finest mind, the seat of the finite ego. Selfless service, however, as found. Well, Hank, you're going to have to be, that's almost, selflessness is the key to dissolution of the finite mind. Okay. The seat of the finite ego. Selflessness service, however, as found. Hank, you need to go a little further on that. Let's see. Research says you can be selfless and still care. Of course you can. I mean, that's what empathy is. Empathy is being selfless, but caring. Putting yourself in, instead of putting yourself first, you put yourself in the other guy's shoes. Allowing these justice to come into your current reality. And you can't just ignore these injustices, but you don't have to react in a programmed way. And that's why we succeeded. We shut down, not only did we shut down the Shoreham nuclear power plant, but we changed the body politic of Long Island and New York State for, just sent it, 180 degrees in a different direction. And we brought back, Long Island Lighting Company stopped being privately owned and became run by the state power authority, right? And a lot of other municipalities, regrouped and took over their utilities, so they couldn't be taken advantage of. And, so for 10 years, so that inner core, the cadre of the Stop Shoreham campaign, it went from 6 grandmas and me to 6 grandmas and me and about 10 other women. I mean, it was definitely a female motif, and I was a grandma, That's why I got into this concept of grandmas are the most responsible people in the room. And you don't have to be a female to be a grandma, as long as you have enough Y chromosomes in you, And so we never let these reptiles get away with anything, but we never was affected by what they, their bullying, their, they had, they tapped our phones, they took pictures of us, and, we knew that they put people who were, plants in our organization, and it was like, energetically, I could see all this stuff. So I go up to the newest plant who wanted to ensnare disharmony in our group, and I would just come over and start hugging them, right? And they freeze up like this, and then once people saw me hugging them, they knew that that was the ritual. They'd all come around, and we'd all group hug, and we wouldn't let that person go until they broke down, started to cry, and say, "Yes, I was sent in to spy on you," and then we said, "Good, we want you to tell everything you know about the guys who hired you," and we had. We did that, and guys would come from the plant and bring us documentation of how the utility company, like in a nuclear power plant, all the high pressure steam lines, everyone has to be x-rayed. And I was in that thing enough to know that virtually every nuclear power plant, they take one perfect x-ray and one pipe, and they use that one perfect x-ray for every pipe, and they just keep putting different, you know, this is, well, J497B, then, but anyway, these guys would come and give us this documentation. Yeah, they were making like, five, six, $7,000 a week. They were never going to get paid like this, but they did want, what they did to kill millions of people. They wanted to be shut down. They couldn't, come out. They could give us envelopes of, and we would bring it to the NRC hearings, and it just slowed it down. So instead of, they wanted to open that sucker in '86. Well, the sucker, didn't open. Period. Meaning we slowed it down by 5 years, and we went to the Supreme Court with about 8 different things, which cost them millions of dollars, which they couldn't just put off on the ratepayers. And so it just got worse and worse, and then the story got, bigger and bigger. And even though it wasn't in, and this is in the '80s, so there was still a certain element. It wasn't until Bill Clinton passed the FCC rule that basically turned all media in the world to be owned by a handful of people. But the thing is, these folks that you think have so much power, research, they really don't. They're really, really inept, and they are really, really impotent. And they can't handle love. They can't handle unconditional love. And that's the only way we can really step up and change this world. And this is open window. And we don't have to build some gigantic movement. No, because the Stop Sharm campaign really wasn't a gigantic movement. It was, about 30 people. Now there were hundreds of people, because every Friday and Saturday, these, Billy Joel or some other amazing, the guy who did Clearwater, what's his name? He was the environmentalist, folk song guy, Pete Seeger. He used to come by. The guy, Richie Havens, used to come by. Who else? There were a whole bunch of guys that I knew from my rock and roll days who would just drive up there with some friends and play music. Thursday, Friday, Saturday were days that people could bring food, and we'd have music and just have a good old time. And we had this acre and a big, gigantic wedding tent if it rained. And if not, we had around the tent, it was like a science fair, And we all have, I meditate, you know, 5 to 20 times a day, because I kind of have to, because that's the only way my body can work. Otherwise, it really, I would, pretty much die. So that's why I do those night, evening guided meditations, because, it's good for me, it's good for you. But all of you, you're all over the planet. You're all in towns and cities and hamlets. Find 1 or 2 people that you can start doing something that you will enjoy to do, and expand it out into, if you're in a little hamlet, expand it out to the closest town, to the closest city, to that state, to, and that's how it works. Because the Stop Sharm campaign, even though, like I said, it was about 30 people, it went global. Because we had people from all over the world who, because you can't believe how many nuclear accidents occur. We had people from all over America and Canada and Europe who would come and stay in our big tent for a couple of days or a week or whatever, especially when we did events. rallies and civil disobedience, we'd have people from all over the place come because they were irradiated. We had people from Sweden and Norway because they had built reactors there that went, sideways. Ba, 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 ba. Simply a point, a very long path. The solution is gaining divine ego. Yep. Right. That's, I call it the egoless ego, but it's the divine ego. That knowing who you are. Yep, divine cool. Exactly, Jane. We are taught to ego id by socialization as soon as we're born. Yep, some kind, and that's why we are exposed to so many traumas. That trauma reality that we call normal materialism. I can't do any of this because I got a job. I got to pay the bills. Not really. Yes, yoga is a life journey. I like that, Fish. And the Illuminati, they are really a second-rate bunch, right? And they are mud puppets. They think they're the ruling class, but they're not. They're really the expendable ones. It's sad. That's why we have to kind of reach out to these guys and gals. And I mean, they're really sick puppies, like I said, the things they do, the people they murder, the wars they cause, the sickness, and just because we live in a planet of abundance, not scarcity. Yep, yep. And I go around to all of the manufacturers of bread and distributors of food and all of that. And I hang out in their parking lots, and I find I just sit there and watch the people come, as the shift change, and I look at them energetically, and the ones that are okay, that person really is going to care about something and is looking to identify. So go over there and say hi. So you work here, right? So how much of this food do they throw out? How much of the bread, stays in the warehouse past the sell by date? But it's still good because, man, that bread will last another year. And so all of these, wherever I go, whatever town I'm in, I find these distribution points, and that's where food pantries, and I learned this trick because I used to work at food pantries, and this is what they do. They go and talk to them and say, okay, whatever you're probably going to throw away, but is still good, why don't you, right? So I would go to them and I'd say, so, and especially when I see somebody walking out of the factory and they got like, a cart with 20, 30, 40 loaves of bread. And I go, hey, so what are you going to do with that? Oh, I'm going to give it to my church. Oh, I'm going to give it to people, family in my circle. Oh, I said, well, why don't you fill your car up and go to lots of different churches and just drop it off there, or go to, and that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. By you just doing a little something, use the old gray cells and look around where you can just make that little connection. And that's what I do. That's what I do. I make these little connections. I bring people together, and then they go off with love's co-creation and do some amazing thing, right? And that's what I'm constantly doing. That's why I do this channel. because I'm affecting all of you. You know, every time before I go on, I shamanically prepare myself so I can see you guys. From eye to eye, I can connect with you guys. And that's why you are chatting the way you're chatting. Yes, Jane, that's kind of what I do. You know, I practice body cleansing. I said, like in the beginning, it's, oh, why don't you guys come to the deep green so we can sit around the fire? Well, the fire is our little screens, right? And I've kind of figured out how to energetically send you the juice through this channel. Exactly, control, you know? Research, that's exactly it. You, in the moment, you act in love with action and not dwell on stuff you have zero control over. That's exactly it. It's not that you're forgetting it or not doing it or sticking your head in the sand. No, you are acting with love's. Well, I don't like to talk about John's personal stuff, but he has no worry about money, you know. Well, and that's his private thing. And that's what people constantly. I'm an open book, right? But people go, oh, blah, 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 And John does that all the time. He says personal things, that because we are in contact, he knows a lot about me, but I never really talk about any of John or any of my friends' personal information. Now, I can talk about folk I know that I interact with that when they represent, like that's why I call John, the canary in the social coal mine, because all you have to do is look at him on his own channel and you can see it. It's not like I'm, you know, spilling the beans, but I do not talk about anyone's private stuff. So all the stuff you guys tell me on Gmail doesn't go any farther than that. And as a healer, doctor, do no harm. That's one of my little oaths. Right. Yep, exactly. I take the thorn out of your paw. Well, we need to honor all our relations. So say we all, you know. But folks who do acts of kindness don't do it for you know honorariums. I do it because when I see someone happy through the things I've done, it makes me happy, right? It's pretty much my motivation. Exactly. In war, you disarm the aggressor without enmity and then tend to their wounds like you would your own brother. Yeah, because they are your own brother. World War One, and they'd have these like Christmas armistice. The Germans and the French and the English would go out into no man's land and share their food and sing and dance. And the third year of that, they all said, if we don't go back to the thing and start shooting at each other, this war is over. We don't have to fight this war. And what did those armies do? They shelled their own people. During the Civil War, when the Irish had the draft rebellion, because they were, you know, in the North, they used the Irish because of the potato famine like a meat grinder. That's why they won. They had, you know, unlimited military weapons because they had, factories that weren't getting destroyed by war, and they, and so the Irish said, no, we're not going to do this. So what happened? Go watch the movie The Gangs of New York. It really describes it very well. And so the U.S. Navy, Lincoln was a psychotic dude. He was manic depressive and psychotic. He threw all the, when newspaper guys were out there and reporting back to their newspapers what horrific things were going on, he put all those people in jail. He stopped all the printing of the newspapers. You think Donald Trump is, you know, no, Lincoln, and he started putting thousands of people into camps. So what people are talking about FEMA camps, I mean, they already had that during the Civil War, So what does he do? He has the U.S. Navy shell, and he made sure that the dreadnoughts with the big guns that went to shell New York all had Protestants on them. And the majority of the people in New York who they were shelling were Catholics. So this is where that reptilian crew, they were up there in their spaceships just sucking down on all of that violence. And that's what these wars are. And the thing about the reptiles sucking down on the violence, if you stop being violent, if you stop being scared, if you stop hating, that's why do you think every night I bring you into your Akashic record and have you evacuate? It's like suck all the fear, hate, greed, ignorance out of you so you can be light like a balloon, not heavy like a bag of water or a mud puppet. And that gives you the grace to travel all through the Akashic record and see all of this stuff, And I do it every night, 400 more than 400 of these shows I have produced, more. And I've gone back and looked at them. They're all pretty good, right? And they have different trends, but they're all pretty good because every single one I did. You should go back to the beginning ones because I do shamanic ceremony, I wake up in the morning with the sun and the birds singing and I do my prayers. And the energy is like vibrating right there. And it lasts about 5 minutes, right? But it's really strong. Man, you want to know how to go to the beginning. See me do that, right? And, anyway, go see them. I'm not going to describe these shows to you because it'd be much better if you went and saw them and had them affect you. And then you get a hold of me at, the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail and ask me the questions, or come on the chat in the evening and talk about it. That would be very good because that's as your sensei, Al Bob. What does the word sensei mean? Teacher. Al, bringer of truth. Bob, a shamanic entity. Boo, boo, boo. We have figured out that we aren't ourselves before that comes. Boo, 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 boo. Yep. Fear is a primary motivator of us to be a mud puppet. Fear is the driving force of us being, and what do we do when we're a mud puppet? We go to our lowest common denominator and we kill for the reptile parental force. Egoless ego is no ego. I'm not there yet, but can shut down the squirrel and the deep meditation. Good. Just the observer. Self-identification is always there, though. And, it's just one more, it's all done with little baby steps, 80% of, even when, when I'm awake, I'm not in state, but, I'm awake 80% of my time. And when I am awake, that's when I don't self-identify. I don't look at my body. I don't, I am my conscious free will when I'm awake. I'm at 5 to 20% when I'm a moron. When not even a moron, I'm a mud puppet. You know, that's what I'm working on now. But that's why I am doing these shows twice a day, so all of you can get there, right? That's why I survived the apocalypse of Spaghetti Bowl. You know, my father was a bird colonel, triple Virgo. My mom's a triple Capricorn, who was like this with the Pope. I was bred to be a rocket scientist for the Pope. My godfather was Cardinal Cushing. You know, you couldn't have. I grew up in a reptile, swimming pool. But the saving grace was my grandma who picked me up as an infant. Luckily I was born as the young. There was a whole house full, and I was born at the time when my parents were switching from the military into the business, and so there was that transitional period where they didn't have it all under control. And so they basically let me go under the radar. I mean, when they brought me home from the hospital, they put me outside on the back steps, basically. I mean, the dog got to sleep inside. I didn't. They put me in a dresser drawer. And I was there for 3 months. And my grandma said, nope, I'm taking this one home. And her neighbor was a black woman that had like 8 kids, and she had a little girl, so she had these big breasts, so she stuck me on the other breast. So I was given, her name was Mamo for her memories, and I was just like Steve Martin in The Jerk. You mean my skin wasn't, and Mamo used to say to me, no, Hal, you are an African American that's melanin challenged. And I've kept that line pretty much. That's why I can dance. That's why I can carry a tune. That's why I'm smart, because most black folk are smart. It takes them, they have to be imprisoned, and their families destroyed, and everyone on drugs for the black fiber to be destroyed. That's, Jim Crow didn't do it. The Ku Klux Klan didn't do it. Even Woodrow Wilson, who was the most racist president we ever freaking had, because he was one of the reasons why Birth of a Nation went, that was a propaganda tool that he did on purpose. You should study Woodrow Wilson. That guy was a reptile from word one, right? I mean, all this stuff is right there. Yes, I was a scholar for 30 years. Yes, I had access to all these libraries. Yes, I had great teachers when I was young. So as I grew, I kept looking for great teachers. And I, knocked on their door. They let me in. They said, you're an interesting kid. You can sit at my feet and listen. And that's the way it's supposed to be. And that's why I am your sensei, Al Bob. I am taking this. No one's paying me for this, Be nice, but no one is, The universe is kind of taken care of, Every time I need a few extra bucks, I did that today, John won't go down and buy anything. And, I had to scrape through my car, and I found $112. I spent $112 on food so we can make food for another week. It cost about $100 a week to make John and I food. And John, once in a while, when he wants me to do something, he will give me some money, and I will, spend most of it, instead of it going to me, I spend it on food. So anyway, so that's kind of how it goes. And then, so I do that, and then John I bought him, he said, all I want is fruit. So I went and bought him $80 worth of fruit. We go look at his video where he stacked it all up. He had already eaten half of the fruit I got, And so all of that food, I basically got, I paid for it. Well, Not really. He maybe give me 40, $50, and I spent, 150 on food. I bought $80 worth of fruit. And so he eats it all up, and then he starts screaming at me that it was worthless because I bought it at the supermarket and not the, the co-op. So, I spent $80 on fruit, and I bought him like 60 oranges and 100 bananas and 20 pears and, 40 apples and a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Well, with $80 at the supermarket. And that was good fruit, wasn't bad. Then I went to the co-op and I spent $15 and I bought 4 organic bananas and 5 organic oranges for $15. So, and they were the same, meaning the guys who work at the co-op, I know them. And I said, so where do you get your food? From the same distributor that the supermarket gets it from, that same box. You got any of those boxes? I went over to the supermarket, got any of those boxes? Same box. So people who think they're getting good food by buying organic at the co-op or Whole Foods, no, they're the same crooks. Yes, I do the work by just being me. Well, Twitchy, without Judas, Jesus would have never gone on the cross. And then he would have no one known who he was, right? The only reason Jesus got nailed up there is that he's the only guy who threw the money changers out of the temple. And when the last night before he got turned in and he was in that garden, basically all the Christian churches were going on about how Jesus was scared to die. No, he wasn't scared. He knew what was coming down. He knew that, like Buddha says, dying's no big deal. It's like slipping out of a slipper. He had no worries of that. What he was complaining to God about was the guys, his 13 male compadres. He said, I'm doing this for this bunch of morons. Is this even worth it? Yes, hey, I'll do this because of the ceremony that needs to go. And Judas was the only person he could depend on to stay awake. It wasn't for the 30 pieces of silver, because Judas came from a rich family and Judas knew Jesus from childhood. He saw Jesus bring animals back to life, And so there's this big, you go read, all the, Jesus was the smart one. And yet all the chuckalug illiterate morons, we see all of their writings in the Bible, in the New Testament. No, I don't think so. It's like it was written by Roman businessmen. That's his story there. And you look at the Old Testament, I went to a Lubavitcher to be a rabbi. And when I was a teenager, I went off to a seminary to be a Jesuit priest, a basic rocket science. More than half of NASA is owned by the Catholic Church. And most of the folk who are working at NASA are Jesuits and Franciscans. Because when they find something interesting, all the guys at JPL, and they're all Satanists, the Catholic Church. It's all Satanists. It's all Luciferian. I kind of keep going on in this story that the universe is a Luciferian illusion, right? And so you can't, all these people out there with all this, this is what it is, all those chuckleheads who are on, Coast to Coast with George P. Head, it's a joke, right? Because they're just, disinformation. Now, the fact, the whole thing about propaganda is the best disinformation is the stuff that people tell you, about 50% truth. Well, the brave thing is to go through your life every day and every way awake. That's the brave thing. So, I've been involved in lots of movements, like from the 60s. I went to hear Martin Luther King on the mall. I have a dream speech with my grandma, my little Italian grandma and me, and we didn't go with any specific group. We just gone on, she loved buses and trains. And ooh, if she could take a streetcar across the country, she would. And in the 50s and 60s, she could. I mean, we had an amazing mass transit system that, Ford and Chrysler and GM and, Exxon and Firestone bought up and ripped out of the ground. So, like I said, we lived not too far from Malcolm X, and we would go hear him talk at Central Park every Saturday or Sunday. I forget which day it was. Slancha to you, Inc. Stay well. Have a good evening. Tony. Teen mortgage crisis. 1980s. Youth protest. Yeah, he's a Long Island boy, and there used to be a place near Old Brookville. I forgot the name. It was right near. It was this club right on the water, and that's where he used to play that stuff. Of course, the Illuminati doesn't control this game. They're just the, middle management. The Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, all that. The folk who are ruling this, like I was saying, they're these entities, these insectoids, and these different entities from different dimensions, and they're living off, and the Illuminati, they take part of these ceremonies too. They're and they really, how to describe them? They're kind of, they're so toxic, they really are. They're no longer human. But they're not in control, that's for sure. They are really the used up husks. Well, see, the things that work only, Donnie goes on, make America great again. Well, America has never been great. But between the 1790s and 1970s, 1890s and 1970s, there was that kind of 100-year period where, when I ask people, so how many political groups are there? And they go, well, there's Republicans and Democrats. No. In that period, there was Republicans, Democrats. There was the Labor Party, there was the Communist Party, there was the Socialist Party, and there was the Religious Party. And the Religious Party wasn't the far right. It was everybody. Go look at all those pictures. Martin Luther King going on marches, and it's full of all these people, who were ministers, white and black, yellow, you name it, rabbis, everybody. And that was, and because there were these 6 different equal parties that had congressmen and senators and representation, our constitutional government worked as best as it was going to work, right? So when you get involved, you have to stay involved. And now I move around a lot, so I get things, humming, spinning, working, and I try to find people to stick them in there. And they do, and they stick, like, the Lower East Side, the gardening movement, our housing, they took over 50 buildings, put 500 families in them. And that housing authority still exists and has expanded and done a lot of amazing things. And that's why, that is kind of amazing, and it's still kind of to work. But it didn't, the people moved on, got lives, did this, did that, and so it didn't expand. And that's one of the real problems of America, is that we're given, We are told that democracy is the freedom to choose what toilet paper you want. So, hope to see you tomorrow, tonight. I love you, Ink. You stay well, buddy. Right, exactly. You need, and you can't have them yelling at each other. You have to. I used to be part of a thing called Ad Busters. This bunch of artists that were politically motivated, and we made art, right, and stuck it up everywhere. And Keith Haring was one of us, and he and I and a bunch of others would go through the subways, and at each station, all of the walls were this white tile, like in a butcher shop, right, so they could hose it down. And they had these squares where they would put posters, and they had like a frame, like a kind of tile that was like a frame. And so when there wasn't an advertisement in that spot, they would put up black paper. So we would go around with white chalk and go, whoa. And the subway guys, you go to the turnstile, and they would give you the basic when the trains were running. So I mean, not exactly, but you could tell at, you know, 1:30 in the morning, 5, 10 minutes either side, the train is going to come at such and such a station. So you get on that thing, and then you could ride it, and each train would stop at that station for about 5 minutes, right? And you would go with 4 or 5 people, and one person would stay on the train, and when the doors would open, you'd put your foot at the door, and then the people would start scribbling on these. It's called tagging in the good old days. And but we didn't use spray paint. We used chalk because you could wash it off, because part of the law said that if you know, physically, you know, screwed it up, and that spray paint, I mean, they have to paint over, but chalk, they just hit it with a hose and it'd be gone. Anyway, so we did it. We'd go out, 2 or 3 nights a week and do that to all of these black pieces of paper in these stations. And one person would stand there with their foot in the door. So when you'd hear the ding dong and the doors would close. Well, if you had your foot in the door, none of the doors could close until you took your foot, right? And if it's late at night, there weren't cops on those trains. There were no TV cameras. So we don't now every square inch is covered by TV camera. So, and that's what we did. And we not only did that, the thing I really loved was, so the subway tunnels weren't tunnels. What they did was just pull the dirt out, make a big thing, put steel columns, put concrete up there, and put tracks down, and they run the trains, and had electric trains. So they had all these steel columns, right? So we would get pieces of plywood, and I had a band iron machine, and we would make these pieces of plywood, and we would put them so the tunnels are basically black, right? They have one light bulb every 300 or 400 yards, but the cars on the inside are really lit up bright with fluorescent light. So as the train would fly through the chasm, we would have these pieces of plywood that we would band iron to the columns, and there would be images. And like how you do animation with a flip card? So the train would fly by, and we'd have about 60 of these pieces of plywood along each of these columns. So if you're looking out the window, you would see these images of like LBJ, having sex with a horse, or JFK getting his brains blown out by LBJ, or David Rockefeller, and that was Adbusters. We do stuff like that, and we did a lot of stuff. I had these little projector things, and we had a boom truck, and so I would put these little projectors on the street lights, so it would project these images on buildings. And they were, we were using the same kind of advertising power that, the MK Ultra guys, but we were counter programming people. So they would see this thing going, and, unless somebody complained, or, the stuff would stay up there pretty long. It was pretty amazing. The powers that shouldn't be really didn't realize what we were doing for at least the whole 4 or 5 years that I was doing it. No one ever came knocking on our door. It never really, I mean, the only time it really got any kind of coverage was when Keith started doing this thing of, he would pick shamanic images and put them on the black page, and people, it would affect them like, whoa, and it would go straight into their psyche. And so the Post and Newsday would start, who is this? What's going on here? And he just kept doing it, and because kind of political stuff that we did, I mean, it affected people, but no one really seemed to care, right? But the stuff that Keith did, it really, and he was developing his own voice, I guess. And so at a certain point, he, called up all the newspapers and the, subway police and said, oh, because they're starting, who is this guy? What is he doing? No, 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 And he said, you want to catch this person? He's going to be at such and such a station at such and such a time. And so, that station at such and such a time, all the TV guys there, newspaper guys were there, and the cops were waiting there. Train pulls in, he gets out with his little piece of chalk, walks up to one of those black things and scribbles something and writes his name, Keith Haring. And the newspaper, he stands in front of it, right? And, he gets a fine, but he became world famous, and he became Keith Haring, and he became a multi-zillion-dollar guy. And I have to say that Keith, he used his money. Yes, he had a nice life, but he took half that money and put it into really good socially conscious, because he was part of, the crew, part of the Adbusters. And we were more than just one crew. We had lots of different things we were doing. And I did it because it needed to be done, and it was fun. It was fun, right? And it made people happy. Just, So Keith gave us a lot of money. We built a circus that we took around New York City, right? And we took that. I was, affected by the whole consciousness of the carnival, because carnival, all through humanity, has been the vehicle for the average person. The kings and the dukes and the earls and the sheriffs would let the people have their, that's what the county fair is, have this kind of thing where they could let off steam, they could do whatever they want, it's Star Trek festival, and that's where a lot of change occurred. Fake light. Yes, Jane, that's where that fake light comes from the Lucifer. Lucifer is the light bringer, but it's this kind of, it's not light per se, it's kind of like, wax paper. Boop, boop, boop. Complacency today. Well, gang, you are my cadre of adepts. I love you all. And I feel, because I've been watching you grow, and you have been growing. You have been, it's hard to see yourself grow. But I'm watching not only what you say, but I can see your who you are energetically, so, through the shamanic waves. And so I'm seeing you grow. And you are a cadre. And you are a chorus. And I will continually support you and give you moral support here to, like, in your little communities, your towns, your hamlets, your cities, your states, your whatever, at your own level, I keep saying, at your leisure, go to your Akashic record. It's all there. Everything you need to do whatever you want to do is in your Akashic record. Oh, I get food stamps, but it's a pittance, you know? And there's always some bureaucratic brouhaha, you know? There's not much I can do about that. I mean, the food stamps are just there to control people. You know, I get like, I think, 60 something dollars for a month. And food prices are going up and they don't go up, you know? And my Social Security, that doesn't go up because every time it does, they take more out from my Medicare or Medicaid. I always forget which one I have. And it doesn't cover anything. And what they truly want to do through that system is not help folk. I mean, there is no welfare left. There is no welfare. And, Social Security is not, they go, we have to, we've just given the richest people on the planet a $6 trillion tax cut. So we have to, all of those entitlements, that like Medicare and Social Security, those are, no, Social Security is not an entitlement. You pay into it. It's like, now, the entitlement is the tax break for the rich. Now, that's, you want to talk about welfare mothers? Boeing. Now, there's a mother who's a welfare mother, General Dynamics, Lockheed Aerospace, Grumman Aerospace, McDonnell Douglas. Those are the welfare guys. They get trillions in welfare. Well, guys, I do all the, you're so sweet to give me advice about nutrition and things of that matter. I just happen to have been doing all of this before you were born, but that's fine, right? One little thing I have that makes it difficult to do all these things you suggest is I'm a homeless guy, you know? Even though I've been, up at the school, I'm a guest. John has thrown me out 26 times. Now, I don't think he's going to do it anymore because John has really come a long way. And John is really, in his heart, he's a really sweet guy. But he, again, is the canary in the coal mine. He's the poster boy of what's going on. And so, and just go look at his videos. It's like, ay. But he's getting, if you go look at him from, the last 2 years, he gets better, right? But at any minute, I could be out in the street because, for a year, almost a. So John bought my school about 2.5 years ago. And of those 2.5 years, I have been out on the street for a year and a half. So it's kind of hard to have an environment where half your stuff is all over the universe, And, like it's hard for me to take a shower because I could be taking a shower, and if I'm taking a shower, I could get thrown out of John's place for taking a shower because I was naked, And so it makes, living a little difficult. But again, I'm a guest of John's. I'm not his roommate. I'm not his significant other. I'm a guest. Fish, if you ever had any experience with the I used to run restaurants and I would get all the food. This is like in the 70s. I had these dumpster restaurants because I was in neighborhoods where people needed to eat. And, if I had a real restaurant and wanted deliveries, they wouldn't come there. I had to go to places where people were throwing tons of food out and I would take and make food, right? And that's when you really start to realize the level of food safety, and it's like a joke. Now, the thing about food is that the reason why we say our prayers is that if you bless your food shamanically, no, it could be made out of the worst of the worst, and you could survive. I think I've explained to you how to energize. I've talked about making crappy wine into good wine, right? And so that's why you need to bless your food every time you do it. It's like my Uncle Leo, who smoked a carton of cigarettes every day, but every cigarette he smoked, he blessed shamanically and sent his prayers. That's what tobacco, that's why, oh, let's smoke the pipe. It wasn't that they wanted to smoke. It's that the smoke brought their prayers to the great maker. So whenever more than two come together in the name of love's co-creation, that's when you can do miracles. That's what Jesus did. Right? Oh, Jane, I'm going to try and come visit you. Yep. The difference between particle physics and wave physics is one's fun and one's an illusion. Now, knowing which one's fun and which one's the illusion, now that's the real kicker. Boop, 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 boop. You're in Canada. Oh, Canada, oh, Canada. Well, Jane, you want to make essential oils? Just come on down where I am. I have tons of trees. The Blue Ridge Mountains have more healing herbs and plants than anywhere else on the world. And right around where I am is one of the more. And there is no one there. That's the other. And the real healing thing are fungi. You know. Exactly, Jane. Naked in a shower? Oh gosh, who ever heard? And dandelions. Yep, got a lot of dandelions. Where I am, it's so beautiful because where the school was had been that way. And since Olga died and I pretty much left, and my dogs have gone, because ley lines move, meaning they are, see, the energy, and I'm going to talk about this tonight. All of you folk who like healing and all of Sarah, Fish, Jane, and Ink, anybody who likes the esoteric, I'm going to talk about the energetics of it all and how it works. And that ley lines don't stay in one place. They move because all of that energy is fluid. It's not like in a rock. Even in rocks, it's fluid. Everything is fluid. We think this is fluid. And that's why they call it the ether. All of this is a fluidic. So anyway, it's been an hour and 49 minutes, and I have to get on. I think it's about 3-ish where I am, give or take. And I love you all. Come tonight. Let's try and get more of the Conjuring. Let's get past 300. We're at 250 something. Let's get some more folks on there. And everyone, See what you can think of. Put your little tinfoil hats on and think about what you can do right in your neighborhood, with your neighbors, with your friends, the people that you don't have to make a gigantic movement, but just in your, want to make a garden? Make a little box and put it on. I mean, I did a gardening movement in Denmark, in Gutenberg, Sweden, really, in Gutenberg, where we had, because they had this thing that you couldn't have a garden in an abandoned lot. I brought that from New York. I started gardening, and they got very upset with me. I said, okay, fine. How about a window box? And they said, oh, sure, you can do that. So I started having people just hang 3 acres worth of window boxes on the side of their building. And I got the city government to tell me exactly what parameters a window box was. And so we did that to the max. And that's what started the organic food movement in Gutenberg. And did I build all those boxes? No. No. But I did, there was this crew of people that I was with, and I said, okay, let's go find out how they want it done. And that's how we're going to do it. But and I laughed, and they just kept doing it and doing it until the government said, okay, you can put it in, lots. And that's why they now have this gigantic gardening movement. But then after it succeeded beyond anyone's dreams, people got bored, and it kind of faded away. It's still being done, but it had this again, the pebble in the pond. I was the pebble, and it was a gigantic tsunami. I went back a couple years later with my first wife, Donna. That was one of the places I took her to, and it was like, and I would take her to places, and she would kind of freak out because people knew me in these places. And she would and I'd been, this my oh, Don, and she'd be part of the crew, but she always felt kind of on the outside. And no matter what I did to try, to a point where everything became DNA, Donna and Al, and that was okay for about 6 years until she no longer wanted to be Al. It just wanted to be Donna. And I said, fine, not a problem. She goes, well, you can't take photos anymore. I said, honey, I'm a photographer. I'm an anthropologist as part of it. Well, and I said, how about I only take pictures with Diana cameras? And you know what a Diana camera is? It's like when you go to a carnival and you win a prize and they give you that little plastic camera, right? And, it's like worth 20 cents. I bought cartons. I found the person who manufactures them. I would buy cartons. And what I liked about Diana cameras is that the film in it wasn't 35 millimeter. It was 2.25, like a Hasselblad. So it was my 30-cent Hasselblad, and it had a pretty good lens, and it had an f-stop, and it had a shutter. So I, went to, and it also had Kodachrome film, so it was color. And a friend of mine did Cibachrome, so I would go over and develop, or have him develop the film and print it in Cibachrome, and because of all these light leaks and all this craziness, it became an art. I had a show of those prints at part of the Whitney annual, and Donna, he goes, no matter what how did you get in that? And I said, because I knew those people. And they said, oh, look what you're doing now. Oh, why don't you put a couple prints in there? I'm not stopping being me, It's just who I am, And I don't do it to be rich and famous, but I live like a millionaire. I live like a millionaire on $40 a month. I always find, I kind of cold through my car, and I found $112 to buy food for John and me, because there's no food left. And I keep making really great meals out of nothing. And he goes, oh, did you jerk off into that? No, John. Did you shoot in that? No, John. Did you anything? Did you poison? No. Here, John. It's pot. I'm eating out of it too. Oh, you ate out of it. I can't eat. It's like, really. And then I'll give him a spoon, a plate full of, this is the greatest food I've ever had. And he says that every time I cook for him for the last 2.5 years. You think he would kind of get the 411 that I'm a pretty good chef and I can make anything yummy. Because, I've been living as an abandoned person for the last 40 years. Even when I'm making a nice salary and have a nice place to live, it's still, I'm there for love's co-creation and not my own. Even when I was a hedonist, working for the corporate, man, for the corporate desperate lawyers, I was still in service to love's co-creation, and that's what allowed me to be successful at that. So that's what we all kind of have to do. And here we are. We're coming up on 1 hour, 55 minutes, 39 seconds. So at 55 seconds, I'm going to say, I'll see you later at 7 p.m. tonight, right? So go watch this over again. Go watch any of the others and get some ideas, some thoughts. Let's run some things together.